have the Ayatollah of fantasy rock and roller with us today, Adam Rank. How you doing, Rank?
They look great in person, and I just can't wait till next year we can pack it full of 25,000.
Hey, Bob, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. I didn't know it was Ball Guys Day. It was being ranked. I mean, how can you lose?
This is the Dynasty Vipers ViperCast.
What is up, and welcome into a very special episode of the Dynasty Vipers ViperCast Behind the Grind series. We're presented by Fantasy Points Media Group, and we're joined by the newly grandparented Matt Donnelly, who's over there at the top left. Tera Roberts right there up in the middle. Major as always. And our special guest today, Mr. Adam Aizer. So, Adam, I have a question for you. We're episode 79. Would you consider this, even though it's July, a Christmas episode of the Dynasty Vipers?
This is the very month that Die Hard came out in, right?
That's right.
Yep. So, we talked about Christmas. It's a Christmas episode. That's cool.
Hey, when you have the Father of the Year candidate, John McClane, gracing you on the show, you know, you gotta throw that in there.
It was just so lazy to say that was a father movie. There are no kids. I mean, that's why it's not a Christmas movie to me. But you know, Jamie will put Die Hard in any category. It's a Christmas movie. It's probably a romance, like a love story to him. I mean, no credibility there.
Very good. Well, we're excited to have you joining us. And as we mentioned before the show, we've had Chris, we've had Heath, we've had Jamie, we've had Dave. Now we have you. This completes our set for the CBS guys. So really appreciate you joining us. And we love that CBS crew. Love what you guys are doing. You want to just right off the top, just let us know kind of like where we can find you, what you guys are working on this offseason?
I don't know. Why don't you ask the other 5 people you had on before me? Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your support, and watching us and listening to us. It means a lot. We've had I think the best part of the job is when we get to meet, listeners, and then a lot of them become podcasters, and it's really cool. So I look forward to being grilled by you guys today. But we really never stopped. We have at least 3 episodes a week the entire year. So we're really in the thick of it tomorrow. We're doing projections, NFC projections, AFC projections are on Wednesday. And you can follow me on Twitter at Adam Aizer, AIZER, and the podcast is called Fantasy Football Today. Fantasy Football Today in 5 is the 5-minute version of it if you don't have a lot of time. So thank you for having me. And if you haven't listened to the show, please check it out.
So I'm gonna be a little selfish here and start us off with a little bit of football related to the Scott Fishbowl, because as you guys know, and like half of Twitter, I have yet to select. It's been a long first round for us, and so Adam, tell us about what division are you in? Your position? How's it going?
Okay, I'm in the Alice in Chains division. It was the closest thing I think to a band that I would like. I didn't like Pearl Jam. I guess I could have gone for. I had the 4th pick, and in my league, Mahomes, McCaffrey, and Kelsey were the first 3 picks, and it took me a while to choose between Dalvin Cook and Darren Waller. I believe Darren Waller actually outscored Dalvin Cook in this format last year, but I went with Cook, and then immediately after, Darren Waller was the 5th pick. In the second round, I went with Tom Brady, and I am 5 picks away, something like that, in round 3. So right now it's Cook and Brady.
Nice.
Yeah.
A little early for Brady.
A little early for Brady. Well, Jalen Hurts was the pick before that. Let's see. Aaron Rodgers was off the board. The next pick was Stafford, and then Tannehill. So I think I like Brady about 1,000,000 times better than I like Matthew Stafford. They are not even close to me. Tannehill, I think, would have been a justifiable pick. I think a lot of people are going to go with Tannehill over Brady. I really love Tom Brady this year. He's a pretty decent player. And so really just a lot of quarterbacks were off the board at that point. That was probably about the 9th or 10th quarterback taken. Obviously, it's super flex.
Yeah.
I'm pretty high on him. He was the number 3 quarterback absent in his last 7 games, and Antonio Brown played in 8 games. They didn't play so well in the first game, but after that, he was the number 3 quarterback per game behind Allen and Rodgers. So they're not gonna have a great running game. I don't think it'll be all right. I think we know Bruce Arians' history. I think you're looking at arguably the best offense in the NFL, and he's going to have a huge season. So he's one of the only quarterbacks that doesn't run that actually won on my team this year. And yeah, it wasn't too early. Screw you, dude.
Yeah,
I'm taking notes. You made a good point. I'm actually now.
I've actually seen a couple of people taking Brady as early as the late first when those quarterbacks are flying off the board. So I've seen it. I don't think second's too early for it.
Well, the thing people forget about this is the quarterbacks have been flying off the boards even more so than last year. And it's that efficiency, the factor that comes into the quarterback position where you get dinged on incompletions and all these other things. If you got a quarterback like that's where Tannehill's effectiveness, his efficiency, as well as Tom Brady's, is going to pay dividends towards the end. And by his own admission, Tom Brady said he didn't quite have a full grasp of the playbook last year. Now he's got another offseason. Maybe he's just playing a little coy with us here, but he didn't have a full grasp by his knowledge of the playbook going into last year. He's got the full thing this year. He's got that rapport with his receivers. And they did pretty good towards the end of the season, like Adam was mentioning. So I do have a question, though, because I heard this somewhere that you're not really a true fan unless you can name all the starters on offense and defense. Adam, what do you got for the Giants? Can you list this off for me?
You do not want me to name every starter.
Everyone.
I don't think I could with the linebackers. I don't know who's going to start at linebacker. So, but I do think that if you're going to, there are different types of fans. Okay. I'm a diehard fan of my teams, and I don't need people talking smack to me when they're like a casual fan of their team and they can name, the best players on the team, but they don't know the left guard, right? They don't know the defensive. If you're a real football fan, no, I won't say that. But if you're a diehard football fan, diehard fan of your team, you should be able to pretty much name all the starters. You might miss one or two, but I think that's pretty important. This actually was a Miami Hurricanes argument because that's probably the team I follow the closest. And yeah, this is like a Seminoles fan giving me a hard time, and he's a nothing fan. He knows nothing about the team. And I read every article. I know all the players. I love it, and so it's a passion for me. I don't need some half-wit fan talking smack to me. You gotta know the team. You gotta know most of the starters. You gotta know the offensive linemen.
Got you. What are Aizer Stats? How do you say your last name again? Aizer?
You got it.
Aizer. Mm-hmm.
Aizer Stats.
Aizer Stats are, so yeah, they've become kind of a running joke, but what they really are is I try to take the most representative games of a player's season, and then I usually take those games and try to give you a 16-game pace. And after this year, I'll start doing a 17-game pace once we get used to that. But, for example, Austin Eckler, games with Justin Herbert that he didn't leave with an injury, right? So there are 2 games that he played with Herbert that he left with an injury, and then there was week 1 that he played with Tera Taylor. I don't care about those 3 games. I want to know how he did with Herbert when he didn't leave with an injury. So I actually think that makes a lot of sense. One of the problems is if you do that for one player, you kind of have to do that for every player, and that can be a little bit tricky. But if you don't want to, if you don't use it to sort of compare him to other players, you just like, hey, here's what he did, and here's what it looks like in a 16-game basis, and here's what it is in fantasy points per game, and just so you know, in the games that he didn't leave with an injury and that he played with Justin Herbert in PPR, he was on pace for 4 touchdowns, and he still was a top 5 running back per game. So that's an Aizer stat. It's those kinds of things. It's kind of removing outlier games. For example, if I were going to look at what Taysom Hill did, I would probably remove the Denver game where Kendall Hinton was the quarterback for Denver, and it just wasn't a real game. What do you gain from looking at that game? I don't really think you gain much. So so I try to look at the games that are most representative of what we can expect and what we should be projecting going forward, and that's kind of what an Aizer stat is. I did them so often because football players get hurt all the time. That I guess it just kind of became a running gag.
That makes so much sense. Like, why don't we all just do that?
Yeah, it's hard. You have to either remember the injuries or look at the snap shares, and then it's subjective. Obviously, it's very subjective. So if we all did it, we probably would count different games. We would never come up with the same uniform rules. You could look at a player. Oh, we were having a discussion about someone. Like what's okay? If you look at CeeDee Lamb and his full season and compare it to Michael Gallup's full season, I wouldn't do that. I would only look at the Dak Prescott games. It doesn't really matter to me that Gallup was really good down the stretch with Andy Dalton because, Lamb was better when Dak was playing. And not only that, Lamb is, I think, going to be a much better player than Gallup. But yeah, I wouldn't look at full season there. I would look at just the Dak Prescott games.
Nice.
So for those of you who are tuning in who know, like, this is about the time of the show where we say, okay, that's the end of our contractually obligated football talk. And if you want any more of Adam's football opinions, you know where to find him. But we're going to learn more about you now, Adam, because we want to hear about your story and be able to talk about that. So it's Scott Fish Day. Music is a big theme, obviously. Bands, you mentioned a couple of them there. But I want to know about your intro music. So if you were the closer for your New York Yankees, for instance, what would be your intro music that would properly introduce you to a crowd?
All right, two choices. If I want to get real serious, I'm coming out to My Hero by the Foo Fighters. You got those heavy drums coming in at the beginning, and then you got the boom, 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 boom.
That's a good one.
Right? Yeah, so I would really feel that. I love that song. It's one of my favorite bands. If I want to be a little bit more goofy about it, I'm going with You Got the Touch from, you've heard it in Boogie Nights. It was in the original Transformers. Yeah, You Got the Touch. Yeah. Transformers cartoon from the 80s, the movie with Orson Welles. That would be a good one to come out.
Nice.
Just like real cheesy synthesizer in there to start.
Love it.
We're all for karaoke here. If you want to build a few more tunes out there, lyrics, we're all for it.
Play the music. It's not acapella karaoke right now. You gotta get the music.
So kind of diving back further into you, tell us about, the importance of sports growing up for you. Tell us, what did you play? We know your favorite teams. Tell us maybe some of your favorite players.
I just told this story. I don't know if I told it on the air or not. I learned a little tennis when I was growing up, and I had a private coach, and he quit because I was throwing my racket and cursing all the time. I was 8 or 9 years old, I think.
Macro is your hero or what?
So ridiculous. I'm a really angry, I used to be, I still am, really angry sports fan. The Yankees have been killing me lately. I have been awful. Just Chapman is really just like blood pressure. But growing up, so my brother's almost 10 years older than I am, and I was born in New York, but moved down to Florida when I was 7 months old. But I'm a New York sports fan because of my brother. So that's why I got into the Yankees. He's a Jets fan. I picked the Giants. It was a pretty good pick instead of the Jets. So Giants, Knicks, Yankees, and then he went to the University of Miami. And that's when I became a Hurricanes fan. So those are my teams. For some reason, I was never really worshiping players, but I'm a big Jeter fan. I loved John Starks. I loved Patrick Ewing. Players weren't really the thing, but did I play sports? Yeah, I played nothing all that. I wasn't very good, but I played basketball, baseball. Yeah, whatever. I was the backup goalie on my high school soccer team. That was cool.
Nice.
I was like the glue guy on the team, kept everyone loose, really just cracking jokes on the bench, never played, never cared.
Gotta have that guy. Yeah,
absolutely. I was a really good glue guy. That was it. And sports was really important to me. And when I was watching sports, I guess I would always kind of picture myself announcing them. Because when my brother went to college, he started doing play-by-play on the student radio station, which is what I did, same school 10 years later. And I knew I wanted to be a broadcaster. Actually, on whenever it was Saturday night, whenever it was Marv Albert's last game, that was really – I was watching – they were showing these pictures of him. I actually didn't see it live. I just saw it after the fact. But they were showing these pictures of him kind of growing up, taking pictures when he was really young and sitting beside famous people and interviewing them and all that. And I was like, man, that's quite a journey. I always wanted to kind of be like Marv Albert. I always wanted to do play-by-play. But I did it in college. I had a lot of fun. the life of a play-by-play person, I just didn't want to travel. I didn't even want to pursue it. Who knows how well I would have done, but I didn't even want to think about that. Your first job is doing like independent league baseball in some city you've never heard of, and I was like, no, I'm not going to go down that route. But I always pictured myself on the air when I was watching sports. And then when I got to college, I just started doing student radio stuff, doing play-by-play, hosting radio shows. And here I am hosting a podcast, which didn't even exist when I was in college.
Well, I think you kind of segued into my question like perfectly. You may have answered it already, but at what point did you decide you wanted to turn like fantasy, your love of fantasy sports, into like a real job?
I was not into. I played fantasy, but I didn't love fantasy until I started the job. So I was more of just a sports guy, not necessarily. I don't even know what real sports. I always figured I'd do something just covering real sports, not fantasy sports. But when I got the original job with the company, I was living in New York, and then I transferred down to the Fort Lauderdale office, which is where CBSSports.com is based. And that's when I kind of hooked up with the fantasy staff, and they had a podcast going. I was doing these other podcasts covering like some college sports. And then I just started doing the fantasy one with them, and it really took off. That was 2009 or 10. And I played fantasy. I had played fantasy since high school. So around the year 2000, I probably started 1999 or 2000 or something like that. But it wasn't until 2010, I think, when I started hosting fantasy football and fantasy baseball today, that I really got into it and it became a passion. So I kind of just fell into the fantasy angle of it.
Nice.
Sorry, I had myself on mute there. You mentioned your brother there, but I also heard you have a famous brother, and kind of a two-part question here. Why did you join him and Dave in the fraternity?
So yes, my brother, whose name is also Dave, by the way. He and Dave Richard are fraternity brothers, and I think my brother's 2 years older than Dave. But totally random. I that's not how I got the job, I swear. It just ended up that way. And when I went to college, I thought the fraternity was really lame. And we didn't exactly rush, but we went to some parties that they were hosting. And they really, really wanted me to join, not because I was so cool, but because I was a legacy. So you have to get the legacies. I could have, if I wanted to be in the frat, but Miami, like people, it's not really that much of a party school. It's not a Greek school so much. The fraternities are really small. The houses are kind of gross. So it's like, I swear to God, this is why I really didn't want to join a fraternity for one main reason. Other than the fact that I don't really party. If you guys listen to the show, I don't drink, whatever. I'm not really a big partier. I would drive people to parties, stay for a half hour and leave. But I did not want to go to the meetings when I was watching the Knicks or the Yankees or whoever. Like I did not ever, I swear, I did not ever want to miss those games. And when I grew up, like the fact that we had direct TV and I had NBA League Pass, like that was the biggest deal to me. All I did was watch the Knicks games and any other game, and same with the Yankees, same with MLB Extra Innings or whatever. And when I got to college, I actually had to listen to the games on the radio, the Knicks games on the radio with Gus Johnson. That's how much of a diehard I was. I couldn't watch the game, so I would listen to them on the internet radio. And I refused to miss these to go to some stupid fraternity meeting. So that basically is the reason. That and the fact that they were lame are the reasons why I did not join.
You got every fraternity guy in your Twitter right now. I'm
a guy who just admitted that in college that I refused to miss the internet radio broadcast of a Knicks game, and I had the audacity to call a fraternity lame. So that is really weird. I don't know how we make sense of that.
No, I like that. I identify with that. In college, I was a big Braves fan. And I felt like just like a superstition. I had to be sitting right in front of the TV at the start of every single game, or if something was going to go wrong.
Yeah, well, and that was what, like when their heyday, or no? You're younger than I am, right?
No, I don't know. Actually, I don't know. It's pretty good. It's Chipper Jones Day.
Oh,
so.
okay. Yeah. Good times for the Braves.
Yes. But kind of diving back into your journey. Along the way, tell us about some of the biggest changes that you've seen in yourself and in the industry from then to now.
Changes in myself. I don't know. Do you guys feel like I've changed? I don't know how long you've listened to my show. I'm a little more
I think
confident.
Calvin's the answer on that one.
Yeah, Cal, you got this.
Well, I don't want to step on a couple of questions that we have later on, but what about just in the industry overall? I mean, like, you've obviously been in the industry for a while now, and you used to juggle baseball and football, and now you just focus on baseball. So yeah, maybe some of those changes.
All right. Well, just to briefly answer the question about how I've changed, I am a more confident host now. It got to the point where I really felt like I had to. You remember when Eli Manning and Joe Flacco said they felt they were the best quarterbacks in football, or like right up there with the best quarterbacks? I really buy into that mentality that even if you know it's not true, you need to approach your job as if you are, good enough. And it took me a while to get to that point where I really felt that way. And I know I'm not the best, but I have more confidence now than I used to. That was probably. I'm 37. That was probably around the time when I turned 30 or so. And I just felt like, all right, I can do this. I've learned a lot. I feel like I can do it now and be a good professional host. In terms of the industry, well, the competition, I don't know what the fate of our show would have been if we had launched last year, forgetting COVID, last year, this year. There are so many great podcasters out there, so many great fantasy analysts out there, and we are so lucky to be doing it for CBS and to have been doing it for so long that we, at least in terms of our podcast, that we were really the second. ESPN was obviously the first, and they, hats off to them because they paved the way, I think, for sports podcasting. And the biggest thing that jumps out is just you got to up your game. You got to be so good because there are so many fantasy footballers out there, right? Mm-hmm. People who don't have to work for a website or something like that to know fantasy, talk fantasy, to entertain people. So that's the biggest difference to me. And I'm sure I can think of some other things as we go, but that's what stands out right now.
Excellent.
Matt, maybe on mute. There we go.
No, I got it here. I was talking to some of my sources here, and they were kind of saying that about 5 years ago you were set to leave CBS, but surprisingly you stayed. What's the story behind that?
Yeah, I met a girl who's now my wife, and she lived in New York. And you can blame Nando for this. He set me up with her. This is Nando's wife's best friend, and they went to college together. And she came down to visit. When Nando was working with us in Fort Lauderdale, my future wife, she came down to visit, and we met. And we hit it off. And we started dating long distance for a while, and then I just said, all right, I guess I gotta keep this going. I gotta move. So I figured I'd move to New York, and that, if she moved down here, there was really nothing for her, or down where I was in Florida. Now I'm in New York. There was nothing for her. If I moved to New York, I guess I felt like I had a decent chance of getting a job. There was a lot of jobs in New York. So I moved up there, and I told them. My boss at the time was really pissed, and he doesn't work at the company anymore, but he was not cool about it. Everyone else, all the people who are still at the company, were very cool about it. I have to say, it has been a great place to work. Really, really cool people. Just, they get it. I mean, they're really, really nice, really cool. But I was going to move on, and that was, I want to say that was 7 years ago. It was definitely more than 5. And one person in the company said, it's just so funny to think about this now because everybody does podcasts from remote locations now, so many people. But back then it was still, doing it on Skype, and it was still really new. And he's like, look, just stay on, and you can do it remote, and you can do it from New York, and that's fine. I was like, all right, cool. So I stayed on, and that was awesome, and I'm really thankful that I did. So thank you, he no longer works at the company, but thank you to him. And really, really glad that I stayed.
I remember that. I feel like it was like even announced, and then like the next show I tuned in, like you were back, you were still on it, and you were like, surprise, I'm still here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember the details all that well, but I definitely said I was leaving, and I definitely thought I was, and I moved. And again, I just think it's funny that nowadays, if somebody moved to a different state, it wouldn't even be an issue. But, all right, we'll see on StreamYard.
Right. Yeah, none of us are in the same state. Like one of us isn't even in the same country.
Right.
And so totally get that.
I was gonna guess. All right, yeah, Matt, you're in Canada.
Yep.
Yeah.
Miami.
Yep. So your role is very unique, and I'm glad you stayed in there because, like, I think, like, as someone who has kind of paved the way in this industry, like, you know, on the podcast and all, like, your role, even though, like, obviously you're really good at fantasy sports, even if Major doesn't think your pick was very good, you're good at fantasy sports, but you take on that role of the host, and you really control the conversation. You manage some pretty big personalities there. What's that like, kind of managing those personalities, making sure you, like, because you definitely get in there and make sure they stay in line.
So I'm glad you brought that up because that is something that has changed a lot in the industry, and that is the sort of disappearance of the true host, at least on podcasts, I'd say. And I kind of resent that because I think I hear a lot of shows, I'm not going to name any, and I don't even mean specifically in fantasy football, but I see a lot of shows or I hear a lot of shows where the host isn't really a host. And I think that there is a skill to it and there is an art to it. I don't really know what the art is. I don't even know if I do it right, but I do think that there is a skill to hosting and that it's important. And I don't want to just be an analyst. I mean, I think that I can't do the job without knowing my stuff, right? I mean, I have to know fantasy football. I have to be able to give advice, but I'd rather ask the right questions. I'd rather be thinking, you know, for the listeners who might hear one of the guys make a point and they want to follow up. And obviously I can't know every question they want to ask, but I have to ask the questions that I feel the audience needs to hear. I need these guys to clarify. I have to keep them honest. I have to bring up the counterpoint. I have to have a discussion. I also have to know when it's time to have a discussion, when it's time to just make a point and move on. How do I manage the personalities? I don't know. I mean, I'm friends with all of them, so it's easy. I don't think I'm really managing the personalities. I just think that you have to personally know what everyone else on the show does best, and you have to set them up for success. And I love the fact that all of our guys have their own methods. There are really no duplicates on our show. You know, like maybe you could say Chris and Heath are a little bit more artistically inclined, but they don't do things the same way. So I think that we really cover the whole spectrum. And that gives me as a host a lot of different options in terms of what kinds of questions to ask. So if Dave and Jamie are talking about something, I can go, all right, Heath, what about, how do you project this? You know, something like that. So it's really managing them is, I think the best way to do it is to set them up for success as much as you can with the questions that you ask. Now, I mean, that being said, obviously I have to ask them questions that might make them look not bad, but might make them look wrong because I'm obligated to bring up other sides of it so we can have a good debate, and I'll just let the listeners decide.
Yeah, I love what you say there. Almost like if the Jazz had decided to let Karl Malone be the point guard, like that just doesn't work. And I love what you're saying there, like being the John Stockton, being able to set those guys up and thinking about them in terms of like running the show. I think that you clearly do, in my opinion, the best job of that. You also have to do some editing, and sometimes that comes with some like interesting personalities. And everybody we've had on from CBS, when we ask them their favorite moment of the show, they always mention Nando's last episode. So from your perspective, what was that like? And yeah, like you don't have to tell us what he was saying, but like what was that like from your side?
I don't really like telling the story because you can't do it justice unless you know what he said.
Tell us what he said.
It was so ridiculous. It's like he said 4 different curse words, but he said one of them like 6 times in a row. And all right, so what happened was, hold on one second. I need a little. Somebody say Pete Prisco.
I mean, we could probably reenact this here by me just hitting the mute button every other word when Adam's telling the story. That should probably get the message across.
So, well, the setup was this was probably about 8 years ago or something like that. And we used to do the shows on a mixer with these headsets. The ones, if you watch the show on YouTube, Dave's still wearing one because his home setup is not really equipped very well. But in conference rooms. And I would have to book conference rooms in our office. We didn't even have a designated space at that point. And all of the conference rooms pretty much were just all glass and in the middle of everything, you know, people would just walk by and look at you and your podcast thing. And it was fine. You know, it was a little weird at first, but I had to leave Nando's last show. I had to walk out of the room. I honestly don't remember why. And Nando and Jamie were there, and I leave. And as soon as I leave, Nando just starts cursing up a storm. And in he's like a sing song where he's like, "This is beep beep and a Aizer beep 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 beep," just singing all these curse words. Jamie loses it. Jamie is laughing so hard. I come back, and this is 20 seconds. I'm out of the room. Jamie is like completely red, cracking up. I knew something. I knew Nando did something. And I walk in, and Nando says something like, "Oh, I mispronounced Jordan Cameron's name. You're going to have to edit it out," or something like that. Like some ridiculous excuse. And I'm like, "What did you do?" And then I listened back to it. It was hilarious, but it was a lot of editing. I wish one day I would try to find the clip. It's there somewhere. But
the uncensored clip.
I found the uncensored clip. Maybe we have it somewhere. I sent it around to Nando and Jamie and Dave. It's incredible. One day it'll air.
That was circa 2014-ish, no?
I think it was a little bit before that because I have now been in New York for 7 years. So it may have been 2014. Probably if it was probably early, but I think it was probably 2013. But I think it was a year before that. It could have been 2014. Yeah. And are you looking in the feed or something?
No. I'm just trying to use the memory here. That doesn't usually work very well. My days, my weeks all get mixed up here, and that was really just a good educated guess there. I was just throwing numbers out, seeing what actually stuck.
Pretty good.
Our sources told us we need to hear the stories of the idiot moron and the touchdown there.
So Idiot Moron, I don't think Idiot Moron's that great of a story, although I might have the soundbite on my mixer here. I don't think I do.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I don't think I do. But Heath and I shared a team, and I was a big Carson Wentz fan. This was after Carson Wentz's second season, and Heath was fading Wentz big time, and I thought he was a superstar. Heath was like touchdown regression, all this stuff. He can't possibly do this again. I'm like, dude, he's incredible. He's going to be great. I think that's what this was. It may have been the year after. And we were sharing a team, and he dropped him in the middle of our show. He dropped him. Right
An accident?
No.
He
dropped him, I want to say, for Robbie Anderson. Is that who it was? Or no, I think it was for Quincy Enunwa. It was some wide receiver who I knew we were going to drop. And I got the email notification, and I'm hosting the show, and Jamie and Heath are there. I think Jamie egged him on. And that's usually how this stuff goes. And I was like, you dropped the guy that I've been arguing about with you all off season, that I believe in so strongly. You dropped Carson Wentz for Quincy Enunwa. And I was like, what? You idiot. You idiot moron! And I just started yelling at him. So that was the idiot moron story. What was the other one?
The touchdown there.
Touchdown there, yeah. We did a mock draft. With some listeners, I think, and we did it on the air, and somebody named their team Touchdown There, and I just didn't get it. I just didn't understand the perverted joke in there, and I kept saying the team name, and there was like another team name that I refused to say because I thought it was inappropriate. And so whoever was on the show was like, "Why do you keep saying that?" Like, "Oh, touchdown there!" That dawned on me what I was doing, and
I still don't get it. I'm lost right now.
Yeah, no, think about it. He'll get it by the end of the show. Major will get it. It took me about a half hour to touch down there.
Yep. Now you say it that way. Yeah, there you go.
I just kept on saying it, but now I feel less.
We go to you, Tara.
Now I feel less.
All about enunciating.
Nice. All right. So if you weren't doing fantasy football, what would you be doing?
Oh man, I swear I have no idea. I've thought about that. If I lost my job, I don't know what I do. This is the only thing I can do. What would I want to be doing?
Yes.
I would love to my brother started a speech coach company or like a public speaking coaching company where he would help people who were about to give a speech or, go on TV or something like that. And I would love to help people, become hosts kind of, I guess. I would love to teach in something like that, which is just ridiculous because some people might think I suck and I have no business doing it. But younger people who want to get into the industry or someone who wants to give a speech, something like that. I think that's a really cool idea. My brother's great at that. So I basically did everything else he did. So I went to the same college, did the same stuff. That seemed like a pretty good way to help people, which is always something I'm interested in. I think I would try to do something like that.
What's your favorite part of working remote, and why is it always knowing where your wallet is?
This guy right here. My favorite part of working remote is my kids are upstairs, and I get to go see them all the time. My least favorite part of working remote is that I never get anything done because my kids are upstairs. To be honest, from a work perspective, my favorite part is that I don't lose an hour and a half, whatever, a day commuting. It's a waste of time. And when I first moved to where I am now, I used to commute to the city, and that was like an hour and 15 minutes each way on the train and the subway and all that stuff. So I am thrilled that I'm so much more productive than I used to be because I don't commute, which is why I don't think people should ever commute, basically.
Yeah, relationships are really important. We know in the industry you got to have relationships. Who are some of the guys that you respect that helped you along the way? We don't have a lot of time, so you could just run off the names if you know.
Well, the thing is,
detail.
The thing is, I've been in the CBS bubble for my whole career, basically. So Dave and Jamie have really helped me out a lot. They're friends and mentors. Keith, I didn't really work with him as much when I was in the office. I don't even know if I worked with him at all when I was in the office. I don't remember when he came to CBS, but I may have already been in New York by then. But Dave and Jamie really taught me a lot. Not so much about hosting, but but fantasy for sure. And when I first started, I was at CSTV, which is now CBS Sports Network. And it was in Chelsea in New York. And the two hosts that were there, I don't know if you guys know these names, but Adam Zucker and Greg Amsinger. Greg Amsinger is he's like the face of MLB Network, basically. Adam Zucker does the CBS college football halftime shows, the studio shows. So there was so much talent at CSTV, and they were really cool to me, but we didn't interact that much. I was like 22 or something, and I learned a lot just from watching them. And actually, if you ever see them, I think my style, unintentionally, is a mix between Greg Amsinger and Adam Zucker. Amsinger is this like big personality. He's like a big guy. He's a really tall dude. He's like this big personality. He's super fun. Zucker to me is so good at just I don't know, at just like deliver. His delivery is so good. You could just look right in the camera. He's like that trusted news source kind of guy. And I don't mean to say that Greg isn't, but those are the two guys that I sort of modeled my style after. Not really consciously. I just thought they were so good. And I feel like I've become a mixture of those two. This, by the way, is a very weird show for me because I don't really take myself very seriously. So talking about my journey and all that, it makes me seem like I'm so accomplished, and I'm a freaking podcast host with the systems behind me. So I don't want anybody to take what I'm saying too seriously. You
are the man. Knock it off. You're the man.
I appreciate that, but yeah, I mean, there are a lot of really talented people. So I'm just really super lucky to be doing what I'm doing.
So we got our boy there, Pod there. He's been in the chat room all day. Who do you consider to be the closest to out of everyone you work with? Like, you said Keith, you didn't really work with a lot. You've been with Jamie and Dave probably a little bit longer. Dave maybe because of the relationship with the brother. Is there something where it's not like for me personally when I listen to you guys from CBS and we have each and every one of you on the show, you guys are a family. It seems like you're all a bunch of brothers. You guys get along. There's a good bond between each and every one of you. Is there, not to single anyone out or anything, but is there someone you're a little bit closer to when it comes down to that? Or
People ask me that a lot, actually. It's really a tie between Dave and Jamie. Yeah, we have a lot in common, the three of us. And yeah, we just have a lot of history now. Jamie and I text. I talk to Jamie the most. We text a lot. Jamie's been, I don't know where he hears them from, but he's got this source of like all these hilarious dad jokes, and he texts me them, and they're amazing. And then I text them to all my friends. So thank you to Jamie for that. Dave is like the sweetest guy. You wouldn't know it. Maybe you would, but he's like he's like a sweetheart. So he's great to talk to if you ever need anything. And yeah, the two of them are like brothers to me, I guess I'd say.
So not the guy who introduced you to your wife?
I didn't know he was part of this.
Well, he's with the Athletic now, so he's got a little bit of room to work.
No, I would say Nando would be number one. Nando, yeah, Nando's the man, and also because his wife and my wife are basically best friends. So Nando's number one. Okay, clip that. Nando always, obviously, my wife and his wife, they have this group of girlfriends from college, and they're all still friends. And Nando always makes me rank the husbands in order who I like the most. Every time I see them, he's like, "Oh, so Bill's number one now," or whatever. Like he always makes me read the most inappropriate thing.
Last question for this, Adam. I'll just want to ask you, like, in terms of like, I know you put together a really good show. Like you have a good flow. You get through a lot of information, and none of that's by accident. Like there's a lot of people just starting out in podcasting or just starting out in live streaming that they're just like, oh, we'll just wing it. Why is that show sheet and like putting all that together and thinking about your thoughts beforehand? Why is that such an important part of what you guys do?
And why does Calvin steal my questions at the bottom of the show sheet?
That's why I was laughing so hard. I was like dying laughing, trying to hold it in, but it's all good.
It's huge, man. It's really huge, and especially because it's important to listen to your show. There's a much different experience when you're hosting the show, and you go, "Oh, that was a good show," or "That wasn't such a good show." Whatever, you get a different feel. But when you listen to it, especially if you're driving, right? A lot of people listen while they drive, and we know that there are points in your drive where you stop paying attention, right? You have to. And you kind of miss what somebody said. I don't know how often you guys rewind podcasts, but if I listen to podcasts, I'm often rewinding them. What I think is good about having segments and topics and not just riffing is I think it pulls my attention in a little bit more. I say, all right, let's go to news and notes or whatever it is. I think it kind of brings me in if I'm just listening and kind of zoning out a little bit. It brings me back in. I think it's a big benefit to the listener to break up a show into segments, especially segments where they can play along at home, fill in the blank, buy or sell, those types of things. I don't love shows where they just talk. It could be really interesting. I don't mean like an interview like this. You know exactly what I mean. A sports show where it's just like, hi, okay, person A, you speak. Great. Person B, you speak. I don't like that. I like topics. I like structure. And there are a lot of things that go in my notes that don't end up making the show. Sometimes you just cut it, whatever. But I do think it's important to have a plan, have a structure, and try to pace your show out a little bit. And it helps you, well, I can't really say it helps you stay within a time limit because we suck at that. but it probably makes it a little bit better.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like Calvin mentioned here, I only started doing, I was kind of the freelancer, kind of going all over the place. Calvin kind of got me to do a show sheet. Basically, he said, you can't go off the show sheet if you don't have a show sheet anyway. So now I have a show sheet so I can go completely off of it later on in the show, as we are known to do every once in a while because we don't do any fact checking and just kind of rambling on from time to time. So we're just going to go through it here. You kind of plugged yourself there a little bit at the beginning there, CBS, fantasy, and everything going on there. Just want to kind of tell everyone where they can find you and the different platforms that you're available at.
Absolutely. So our podcast is everywhere. Fantasy Football Today and also Fantasy Football Today in 5. Please listen to it, download, subscribe, tell your friends, all those things. You can follow me on Twitter at Adam Aizer, Aizer. And that's pretty much it. I mostly tweet about food, I guess. But there'll be some fantasy tweets. I've been a little inactive lately. I gotta get back on there. But I tweet all of our show information when we have podcasts and things like that. Do some fun Twitter polls, and those end up making the show. And during the season, a lot of interaction on Twitter. I get a lot of content from the listeners. So I think it's a pretty interactive show. We read a lot of emails and we read some tweets and things like that. So please follow me on Twitter at Adam Aizer.
All right, that's perfect. And like up here, top center, we got Tera Roberts there, pounding out new material there. She's got her little 30 players in 30 days solo series. Adam, you know as much as anybody what it's like to roll solo on a podcast and the difficulties, and Tara's been nailing it. Calvin's over there doing some work with DLF. Got a team spotlight series to go check over at DLF. Major's in the middle of developing a nice new little show. We were kind of joking around, Calvin and I, with the title of it, so we're not too far off. But we figured we'll figure out where that.
Adam should help us with that. I feel like Adam would be good.
Yeah, let's do it. All right, what? So give me the background. Let's come up with.
It's just a lot. It's a lot of major puns. Like, give them some. I think Kyle, you had a good one. What was the
my favorite is the majority report with the emphasis on major, since his name's Major there.
That's not bad. What's the premise of the show?
I'm going to be talking about more serious things, like where like sports meets real life, like that type of stuff. Like episode 1's going to be the language of fantasy football. Okay.
All right. So what about touchdown there?
Works for me.
Major touchdown there, something like that. We'll just throw Major in there.
No, touchdown there, Major.
And you see me on like a pedophile list or something? No. Sorry. I think I might go with what Calvin and Matt suggested. Thanks, Adam. But
yeah, all right.
That's awesome.
And just to kind of go here, check out Fantasy Points Media Group there. Use promo code 21Vipers10 for 10% off the Fantasy Points subscription. There's some brilliant people over there. Hansen, Barrett, Barfield, Dolan, Kaplan, you name it, they're over there too. So make sure you go check that out. Get yourself a subscription as well. And I leave you with this. And Adam, it's kind of a rhetorical question, so I'm not really expecting much of a response here. But if John McClane and Mrs. Doubtfire somehow had the perfect football father combination, would it be Joe King? That's what I leave everyone with today. Joe King.
Oh, I get it. Yeah, that's good. I'm just going to leave that out there.
Major's going to have to explain that one to me later.
All right, I'm like trying to Google Joe King. Cool.
Joe King, come on now. Anyway, with that, this is episode 79 of the Dynasty Vipers ViperCast, and we're gone.